Because all my neighbors know I'm a ham, and they're all quite proud of me, and they're all supportive of the hobby.
I don't even know who my neighbors are.
My point is, I didn't put this up as a stealth antenna. That's the way it is by definition, as long as they don't see the feed point. So, I mean...
Now, I see a wire going from the chimney off to the right and to the left. What is that?
That's what I saw.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you the next frame. This was not intentionally made bad. It was shot at
Our feed point
450
is
using a
visible.
cell phone camera.
Okay.
It's the juniper. It's coming right across the juniper, across the chimney. That's what you're seeing. And that's the horizontal length. If you could extend this tree like this, the feed point is right up here, but it's up in a tree branch. You could be 10 feet away from this tree, and if I didn't tell you to be on the lookout for an antenna, you would never know it was there. And the slope is coming from up here. I had to do this proportionally. And in version number 1, the slope actually came down here and terminated way up in the tree. When it broke, I've never since cinched the other end up as high to go back over the top of the tree. And when I do so, I mean at the west coast. Now, what's the operative obstacle I got here?
Aluminum siding.
I'm a traditionalist. We never updated from aluminum siding to vinyl siding. Okay, so 2 things I would like to convince you of the wisdom of. Barriers on your foil insulation in your attic. Do they trap RF? Yes, they do. Does this act at least as a mitigating block against the West Coast? It does. It's not what I desired. I'd like to work some people on the West Coast, but when you're in a competition where you're trying to work Europeans, there's something to be said for that approach. And I swear there's a mild reflective aspect of the aluminum. But it's more the hill. All right? So yeah, admittedly, not the best of pictures, but here's the horizontal section, here's the vertical section, and the way it's configured now, it does stay below the house. All right, so watch. It gets a little bit more obvious. So like I say, I'm only showing this, the advantage of it being a stealth antenna. I'm quite proud of my stuff. I used to run it into these trees right by the sidewalk. And the 3 or 4 neighbors that walk their dogs on the property would know, oh geez, if he put that orange cone in front of the tree, I better duck. All right, so here we go. Now you can see it. There's a little precipitation on it, and I'm at a purposeful angle where the sunlight is hitting the plastic on the insulation. You can now see it. So it's just like Stan said. It's going by the chimney and by the juniper tree. This is about 10 feet off the ground. Not bad for RF purposes. It's also above the point where anyone that's vaguely curious is not likely to get to the antenna unless they're really determined to do it. All right. This is yours truly. There's the feed point. See the tree? The wire disappears into the tree. The feed point is in the down position. I'm playing with it, showing it to you so I can read you the serial number and the model, put it in the next portion. When I'm done, I pull it back up 2 to 3 feet. It's camouflaged behind a branch, and the most obvious part of the antenna disappears, and that's why you can't see it. So that's yours truly this afternoon. Fallon Designs. Now, anyone will tell you these guys make great Fallons, although I would tell you the same thing for anything made by DX Engineering. For the 2-to-1 loop, they're known to make the best, and it's a nice portable configuration. So what you can see is it just feeds into the 2 eye bolts, and I get an eye bolt on top to cinch it up into the tree branch and pull it back and forth. So it's 2-to-1 bound. It's their 50 ohm option, 2 kilowatts, accommodates my linear, figure about $90 to loop. And there's the bottom of the coax I'm using now. We'll be upgrading that to RG213. Okay. So that's what the basic configuration looks like. This is what you don't get in the Midwest. This is what we get in exchange for having rocks in the soil. And this is so funny. I have read accounts of tree populations in the United States. I'm an Appalachian trail hiker, and in the guides, they used to always explain to you, right now you're in the so-and-so Great Forest. You know, so in portions of North Carolina. If you look, you'll notice there's a 300-foot oak tree off the trail about 1/4 mile. It's on a portion of the property that was on a King's grant, and that was then eventually ultimately willed so that tree would never be cut down. That's what a 350-foot oak tree looks like. And you're sitting there going, 95 feet at the top. You follow me? What they used to say, though, is if you could have jumped out of a plane with a parachute back in 1600, the odds were good, 50-50 you would have landed in an oak tree, because they were by far the dominant hardwood in the United States. Let's go to our field-based site at the observatory. You know what that looks like. On the periphery of 2 huge parking lots, we had a dozen oaks that exceeded 90 feet in height. If there's an oak there is hope for putting up a loop. Follow me, and that's why I can pull it out. The cooperative neighbor's tree, nicknamed by me and my best friend, the previous owner of the house back in the 70s, was General Sherman. General Sherman is 90 feet downrange of my oak tree, and the owner gives me permission 3 times a year, and when she takes her Christmas vacation, to simply haul up with the strings I've already put on her spruce, my 40 meter trap. That gets me to a net altitude of about 70 feet above her property, and remember, I'm stacked up the equivalent of 40 feet up on the hill. It really works out well. And she doesn't mind it for just the time that it's up there. So, that's the oak. I worship it. Let me show you the takeoff points, and then you'll see what I mean about the optimized hill conditions. There's subtleties into everyone's location. Oh, I just wanted to wrap up with what we've got here is an insulator. So, I don't know if you guys have ever seen these. Any of you horseback riders? I don't know if I brought them along. The electrical fence insulators. They come in many varieties. A lot of times they use yellow. Now, those are too obvious. That's one of the black fence insulators. You can barely see it if you look. It's right here. It's 10 feet above the base of the oak tree. So that's what keeps the vertical or horizontal portion tensioned and about 10 feet off the ground. And it's simply an eye hook that you screw in. So you can get about 2 dozen of these for $10. And when you're just trying to hack together a loop antenna, instead of pulling it up with real insulators and using the tree as the insulator, this is just a good way to keep tension. Is what I'm doing dangerous? This is subject to some debate. This much I can assure you. There's no leaves on the tree right now. You can get away with this. Where does the debate ensue? So Stan, have you ever heard this one? Will you set the leaves of your tree on fire if you use enough power in your labor? I know, some people used to claim that you would. It's an old wives' tale. But this baby is only used in the winter, so really it's not a matter of concern.
But the RF is going to kill the tree.
Nah. Helps it grow fast. All right, the takeoff.
That's what the neighbors say.
I am looking out my second floor window, and mind you, the attic is above me, and the diagonal is passing through the attic window. I just couldn't get a clean shot out the attic window. Here's the van. That's my mother-in-law's property. The oak tree or the maple tree used to be over here that held the dipole. It's gone in exchange for these sidewalks. I overlook Scalzi Park. It's tough to get much dimensionality, but there's the downward slope into the park. That's looking in the direction of the antenna, Africa, Mediterranean.
Well, when did you take that picture?
Today.
Today?
Yes.
Why didn't you shovel her driveway?
My mother-in-law?
Yes.
Oh, it's a long story. Those are the people here that are my closest friends know it. I'd rather not. Now,
shovel my own.
Looking northeast to Europe is yet another ridge line, and it's even higher. So no kidding, the hill is going downhill in the direction of your intended destination. Optimal conditions. So really, I really lucked out in terms of the UGH. But again, I bought a home from a hand. He knew what the hell he was doing when he got the place. Right? We are going to leave off with my presentation on the half square. Has anybody ever seen one of these or used one? Because I've talked about it for years. So a buddy of yours put one up, or what was the situation?
I had it up.
You did. What band?
On 40.
Okay, yeah. If I had to pick the band that a lot of people want to use it on, if you can't afford a 2-meter ream, or you just can't, or a 40-meter beam, or you just can't get one up, which would be by situation, this is a nice alternative to try for really exotic DX. It's in the loop family. Why do we say that? It's a matter of the equation and the way it behaves. It's a vertical radiating scenario. Just take a look, though. It's a slightly different cutting formula, but for all intents and purposes, the amount that you use on a half square is the same amount that you use on a loop. It's a vertical radiator, thus, they have no other category to put it in. It's part of the loop family. It's the best part of the loop family. The rest of those guys are mundane pieces of crap. These babies hum. What kind of results did you get with yours? Did you use it for a number of years?
I used it for a few days.
Okay.
It works.
Oh yeah. You've got a good layout, because I recall from hitting your property that you've got on the periphery of your property, the classic configuration is some good 60-footers, right? Okay, we'll talk about the requirements to put one of these up. But the overall length is split into 3 sections. Interestingly enough, it kind of works the opposite way of a loop, all right? There's a line that runs across the top of the antenna that feeds 2 vertical elements that sit upside down, is the way I would describe them. The horizontal line is known as the phaser, all right? So, half wave on top is a phaser line, 2 quarter wavelengths drooping down of the phaser line. Looks kind of odd. It's called a half square because when you look at it, you go, it looks like someone cut this antenna in half.
It's an upside down U.
Right. Where's the other side of the loop? It's a loop. It's just configured a little bit differently. That's the way they define it. All right. So these babies rule. They're really nice. Let me get into it. Show you some dimensions. First off, where? 160 and 80 and 40. They're great antennas. Low radiation angle, that's what you want for DX. We're talking really low radiation angle. Here's the other part of it though. Discriminates against local interference better than a conventional loop. So it's an improvement over the conventional vertical, even more so than the loop is in that regard. So it's a low noise antenna, right? And it has a tendency to reject signals that are local, as well as interference that's local. It's one of these scenarios where you'll tune across a band and go, when you first test it, this is the mark of a half square. There's something wrong here. I'm listening to the guy as I always hear the nets. I know they're down in Rhode Island, or I know they're in Delaware. I'm not hearing them on this damn antenna. The dipole hears them fine. I'm hearing crap in the background of this antenna. All of a sudden, the DX station rolls in. We're talking Tajikistan on 40 meters. And you're like, wait a minute, where's this guy coming from? And you switch to the dipole, there's nothing there. That's how dramatic these antennas can be when signals are coming in from your favorite direction and they're coming in low angle. They are broadside configurations just like vertical loops are. What do you need to pull this off? You need, for the horizontal runs, right? You're going to need 69 feet on 40 meters, 131 feet on 80 meters, 270 on 160. Sometimes people describe these as being better than they are, because you'll hear 3.8 dB or 4 dB over a dipole. No. Vertical antennas never compare against dipoles. If you ever see figures, someone is distorting the argument. What they mean is you're getting gain over a single element vertical of almost 4 dB, and that is very significant, especially because the mechanics of this are so simple. Better noise rejection than the standard vertical, or the loop even. Broadside maximum radiation, again, does not need a ground. There's a way you can feed them using a ground. The preferred way is a current feed. In the upper corner, no ground. Are you doing the current feed? Upper corner?
I think I remember
straight with coax. I know you didn't put radials down though, right?
No.
That's easy.
No radials.
Use the current feed mechanism then.
I
All right. 52 ohms. Hooks right into your coax. No matching network. Doesn't require any elaborate feeding arrangements. Now, has anybody ever sat down with a DX engineering catalog on a winter's night, dreaming that you had 20 acres of land, and you look at their vertical systems? We all do this. Midwesterners can actually pull this stuff off. We don't have the real estate, right? So you look at these gym configurations, you're like, these can't possibly go up. I mean, who the hell puts these up? To put up, for instance, 2 vertical antennas to fire and support one another, 5 necessary phasing harnesses in the boxes, right? Phasing box, $275 for $300. Harnesses, throw it another $100. $400 to manually phase by the traditional method using tuned circuits 2 vertical radiators. A half square is 2 vertical radiators. It's just that you have to decide in which direction you're going to point them in. The phasing is done by the phasing line. You don't need a network. Now you know why these things are cheap. And it's wire, guys. It's wire. One other thing might you need to buy, your obstacles. The width, 2-to-1 width, is about half a dipole. You do have to worry about that. So on 80 meters though, when you're operating the DX window, I'll leave a 20 kilohertz sliver, right? So it's not a major disadvantage. These guys work out amazingly well, all right? Here's the way a lot of guys will use them. They'll put up 2. If you're a serious operator, you put up 3. But you can envision it right now. Here's my angles. Europe, right, as I'm pointing. South America, and then over the North Pole to Asia. Now, if you want to really get exotic, a lot of guys will have the 3rd. So this is basically Southeast Asia, and then going down to South Africa. 3 networks. To buy the phasers to imitate this, buy a half square configuration and double it, or I'm sorry, just buy a 2-phase vertical and double it, or, God bless you, spring for a 4 square, you're up to $1,000 worth of hardware. You can imitate the same network configuration with 2 half squares, net amount, $100. I kid you not. All you need is the land, the trees, and the people that know how to put them up.
I prefer the round.
Well, I hate you. God bless you, you know. This is what they look like. I'm showing you a simplistic diagram only because this is the best way to show you the coax and a critical element as to how it works. The coax goes onto either corner. The vertical phaser, or I'm sorry, the horizontal phaser is going to be attached to the interconnector. The immediate radiator, its quarter length, is hooked to the brain. So here's what happens. It's here, 90-degree odd phase here, and basically they are firing in a broadside configuration. Right. Works out nice. Where this is a strong diagram is it shows you the requirement that the feed line has to come down at a 45-degree angle from that upper corner, right, parallel to the plane of the antenna. It's very important that you do that, or...
Will that explain why?
Yes, you'll get radiation of the coax. And it's really, really freaking bad. The first time I had one, I bought it. It was commercially made from a reliable guy. I'm like, what the hell's got to be wrong with this antenna? When you're getting a high SWR, there's two things you can try. But the first thing to try is the cheapest one. Look back at the diagram. I never saw it like this. Do you understand what I'm saying? I never saw this. As soon as someone said, by the way, one thing you got to watch with that antenna is 45-degree angle. I've got the, what's it called, 259 in my hand, the antenna tester. I just walk the thing. I'm just paying attention to the tuner for no particularly good reason. I'm like, Eureka, this thing just dropped down to a 1.3. I haven't had it lower than 2.3. What's going on? 45-degree angle makes all the difference.
You learn with experience.
Yep. The other thing is, and this will kill you too, is sometimes that's not enough either. And what you're going to end up doing is putting a choke balance right at the feed. So this is just a one-to-one choke. It prevents radiation from the outer braid of your connecting coax. This is kind of a better representation, though, of what they look like, but you don't see the feed line drawn in. All right? By the way, what you're going to find out is everyone's got their own blessed idea as to what the dimensions should be. Do you follow me? These are his dimensions. This is yours truly doing the personal override. Nice diagram for a look-see, all right? 492 over the frequency in megahertz for determining the length of the phasing line. 246 over the frequency in megahertz for determining the vertical radiator portion of it. So, this is just the phasing line. The work is being done by these guys. Now, when I have mine up for 40, 70 feet up, right? Plenty of room, though, for it to clear the ground. The other thing is you only need 6 or 7 feet of ground clearance. Now, what I used to do to make certain that none of the deer that ran through the meadow that I used to have the stealth antenna in would choke themselves to death was I never tied down the ends of the elements. I had fishing weights. And they didn't go all the way to the ground. They were just there to make sure that the wires hung vertically. If you don't weigh them down, they have a tendency to coil back up again. Now, this may strike you as unlikely. Where are these used? 40 is the favorite band. It's just meant to run a half square. You can't afford a 2-element beam. Phasing line, about 69 feet. The vertical radiator is approximately 35 feet. Height requirement, 50 feet will do it. I had mine up at 70, but 50 feet will do it. And what you would end up with is a scenario where the bottom part of the radiator is still good 10 feet above the ground. It would be the same. 80 gets a little bit more challenging. Most of my work was done on 40, but I did have one at the museum, in the pit, stealth location. I had it up one night. I also have a beautiful off-center fed 160-meter homemade dipole that really gets me out. And then I got the half square working. It was tuned. I'm tuning across the DX sliver, and that's when I heard the guy in Tajiki stop. I'm like, I'll be damned, these things really work. Again, switch to the OCF. I could tell he was there. I couldn't understand a word he was saying. It's the low angle radiation. That's the true part of this. 160. This is the part of these that's so cool. The top phaser's 270 feet. The vertical element's 135 feet. Who the hell's got 135 feet to do a vertical element? Let me give you a scenario. You know I live next to Scalzi Park, right? Some of my better friends know I can actually tell you the height of those light towers. Top millimeter. How do I know that?
How many millimeters?
Stealth antenna operations over the years. Could I get on the air with 160 using those towers? Well, yes, you can shunt feed those towers. I did that one year and worked about 30 states in one of the 160-meter competitions in the CQ magazine. But with this baby, if you need 135 feet radiators, even at 120 feet, it's not enough. Here's the key. If you're going to use it for 160, there's no law that says you can't make the half square begin to look like a loop again by taking the downward vertical radiating elements and bend them in, tie a piece of string that unites them. And then when you look at it, if you didn't know what you were looking at, you just think you were looking at a vertical box. The string is just holding the radiators at a 90-degree angle. Because what happens is they're fed at the top. Now, if you've never heard this before, when you feed a vertical antenna at the bottom, it's nice that you have the light, but 90% of the work of radiating the RF is done very early on in the length of the antenna. And when you flip it, guess what happens? All the radiation is done by the top portion of the elements, and the fact that you bent them in makes little or no difference because the bottom half of the elements are only handling about 20% of the radiation. Works like a charm on 160. My only regret is that pit's gone. We're doing the 160 experiment when I wanted to switch from an inverted L to one of these babies. If anyone wants to put up a loop or a half square as a club project, we would just come to your property, invade it, and put one up. We would be delighted to do it. I've got all the parts to build about 5 of them. That's the presentation. Seriously look at these guys and seriously look at the right angle deltas. They're great antennas. And if you've got the room, think of that horizontal loop in lieu of spending $300 or $400 on some piece of equipment that tells you it'll work every band perfectly.
I don't think you were around. We had a member lived on Long Ridge.
Right.
John was his brother. I can't think of his name now.
Right.
But there was a mansion behind his property,
Right.
and the guy died. The property was vacant for quite a few years. Well, he cut and tapped into the telephone line going to the mansion. 2 miles of long wire antenna.
You ever stop what it might be like to just pull into the employee's parking lot at the Tappan Zee Bridge, walk up to something that's a bolt or a screw attachment to one of the beams on the bridge, put just a connector against it, boom, throw out a ground wire into the Hudson, and see what you can light up.
I hate to say it.
Yeah.
There is no longer a Tappan Zee Bridge.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. It shows you how long it's been since I did the commute. Final sign-off stuff, because you asked about this, only disadvantage, these are very sharp Q antennas, bandwidth's limited. But again, if you're just working the DX windows, 75 kilohertz on 80 is fine, and so is 140 on 40 meters. If you're going to be in a DX competition, though, I will tell you it's important that you cut these for about 7.150, because I used to use these to work European stations in the ARRL and the CD magazine, sideband DX competitions. Remember, too, the braid of the coaxial feed line feeds the immediate radiator, right? It's the inner wire, center insulator, or the center conductor that feeds the phase line and the far side vertical line. If you're having the problem with feed line insulation, use of a choke valve, running $35, $40. Or, again, just try repointing the antenna connector wire, making sure it's a 45 degree angle. But here's the thing, and this is the thing that clears up a lot of misconceptions, so I'm just going to leave you with this. These are great. Where are they great? They're great at 160, they're great at 80, they're great at 40. Why are they great on those bands? Let's get back to the efficiency of a dipole at low altitudes. Okay? If you can't get a dipole up at least a half wavelength, we're firing a lot of your signal straight up into the sky, and they're not hearing it in Europe, you're not hearing it in Asia. What we're really doing here is making an effort to alter the pattern so the radiation goes lower and therefore goes further. And what it all boils down to here is when you're on 160, half wavelength is going to be 250 feet up. Can't make it. Go back to 80, 125 feet up. Nobody can do it. 40 though, it gets a little dicey. And here's what I would tell you. You have 2 trees that can support a dipole at 70 feet in the favored broadside direction, right? And put it next to a half square. Oh, the dipole is going to win because you have the vertical height. 20 meters, 15 meters, 10 meters, you would never run a half square. Why? Because the altitude requirements for a dipole working very efficiently are dropping significantly lower. What boggles my mind is in their own way, the half squares and its big brother, the half square, the bobtail curtain, basically is the big brother of this antenna, right? But when they are all said and done, these guys are designed to work on lower bands, and I've actually seen guys advertise on QST or QRZ.com that they're selling off their half square system that was designed for a vertical array, and they bought one for 10 meters. I'm like, boy, there was something seriously lacking in the intellectual abilities of these people. So just understand there's no perfect antenna for one band. Loops, though, give you a lot of bang for your buck. And remember one thing. If you come to me for help before you put the antenna up and you say, I don't got a lot of money to spend, what can you do for me? I'll be more than happy to help you. But if I get over there and find out that you spent $300 on a commercial antenna before you call me, I will disown you. What does that mean? Call me before you buy your first antenna. That's it.
Thank you.
And in reality, you put up whatever you can get to work.
Right. No, follow me. And what I said about the aluminum siding, I do still hear signals from the west. You'll always hear something. And if you've got less than optimal situation, you're just going to throw it up and see what you got. That's all. But then just understand that there's some people that are in such desperate situations, they drive around in their car with a slingshot, one of those PAR vertical end-fed antennas, or there's a couple of new brand names of them, throw a rock on a tree and get out just fine.